Your liver may be silently filling with fat right now, and the moment you feel hungry could be when it finally starts healing. 3 years ago, I read a statistic that genuinely unsettled me. 1 in 3 adults has too much fat stored in their liver. Most of them feel completely fine, no pain, no warning signs, no dramatic symptoms. Just a silent process unfolding deep inside the body, year after year unnoticed. I remember sitting there, staring at that number, realizing something uncomfortable. There was a very real chance that my own liver, the organ I almost never think about, could be slowly struggling without me having any idea. That thought stayed with me longer than I expected. Because the liver isn't a small, optional part of the body. It's the largest internal organ we have, weighing about 3 pounds in the average adult. Every single day, it performs more than 500 different functions. It filters toxins from the bloodstream, produces bile to help digest food, stores energy for emergencies, builds essential proteins, and processes nearly everything that enters the body. Without the liver, survival wouldn't be measured in decades. It would be measured in days. And yet, despite how vital it is, most of us live as if this organ has unlimited endurance. I started thinking about my own routine: breakfast early in the morning, coffee a few hours later, lunch in the afternoon, snacks in between meetings, dinner at night, sometimes something sweet before bed. From the outside, it looked like a normal, responsible lifestyle. But biologically, it meant my liver was almost never resting. It was constantly processing, storing, filtering, adapting, working non-stop without pause. Then another question began to form in my mind, one that felt strangely personal. What actually happens inside my liver when I stop eating for a while? Not dieting advice, not internet opinions. Real biology, real physiology, hour by hour. The more I looked into it, the more surprising the answers became. Because it turns out that hunger is not always a signal of danger. Sometimes, it's the signal that your body is finally shifting into repair mode. And once I understood that, I could never look at a skip meal the same way again. That realization pushed me to look more closely at something I had always taken for granted: the simple act of eating throughout the day. When I began paying attention to my routine, I noticed how constant it really was. Food wasn't just something I had at meals. It was woven into every break, every meeting, every moment of fatigue or boredom. A quick snack to stay productive, a small treat to reward myself, another bite late at night because the day had been long. None of it felt excessive. In fact, it felt normal, responsible, even. But the more I studied the biology behind it, the more I started to wonder if my body experienced this pattern very differently than my mind did. Every time we eat, something precise and automatic happens inside us. Carbohydrates break down into glucose, glucose enters the bloodstream, and the body responds with insulin. I used to think of insulin as a helpful assistant, quietly managing energy in the background. But over time, I came to see it more like a traffic controller, directing fuel into storage. It tells the liver to pull sugar out of the blood and save it. It tells fat cells to hold onto their reserves. It keeps everything neatly packed away for later. That system works beautifully when meals are spaced apart. It becomes a problem when the signal never turns off. If food keeps arriving every few hours, insulin stays elevated almost all the time. The body remains in storage mode, even when it doesn't need more energy. Fat continues to accumulate, especially inside the liver, because the release signal never comes. There's no clear pause, no moment for the system to shift gears. What struck me most was how gradual this process is. Nothing dramatic happens in a single day. There's no sudden collapse. Instead, it's a slow buildup, a quiet overload that develops over years while life carries on as usual. That was the moment I started to see the issue differently. It wasn't that my body was failing. It was that my body was doing exactly what it was designed to do: store energy whenever food was available. The real question was whether I was giving it the opportunity to do the opposite. Because biologically, recovery doesn't begin when we keep feeding the system. It begins when the signals finally change. That shift in signals is subtle at first, almost invisible, but it marks the moment when the body begins to change direction. Several hours after your last meal, something quiet starts happening inside the bloodstream. Insulin, which had been guiding energy into storage, gradually steps back. Another hormone begins to rise in its place, glucagon. I like to think of these two as partners taking turns. One builds reserves, the other releases them. And when glucagon takes the lead, the liver receives a new instruction it hasn't heard in a while: start using what you already have. Inside the liver, there's a limited supply of stored sugar called glycogen. It's not endless, it's more like a small emergency fund, carefully saved for moments when food isn't immediately available. As the hours pass without eating, the liver begins drawing from that reserve, releasing glucose into the bloodstream to keep the brain functioning and the body stable. This process is incredibly precise. There's no panic, no sudden drop. Just a steady hand maintaining balance behind the scenes. During this phase, I started to recognize sensations I used to misinterpret. A little restlessness, a wave of hunger that rises and falls, a brief dip in concentration. For years, I assumed these feelings meant something was going wrong. Now I see them differently. They are signals of transition, evidence that the body is recalibrating, adjusting its internal systems to a new rhythm. Eventually, though, the stored sugar runs low. The small reserve that carried the body through the early hours begins to empty. And that's when the most fascinating change begins. The liver turns to a different source of energy, fat that has been stored for weeks, months, sometimes years. Those fat molecules are broken down and converted into compounds called ketones, which travel through the bloodstream and fuel the brain with surprising efficiency. What changed for me wasn't just the science. It was the realization that hunger doesn't always mean depletion. Sometimes, it marks the exact moment when the body discovers a deeper reserve it has been waiting to use. And just when the body finds that deeper reserve of energy, another process begins to unfold, one that feels less like survival and more like restoration. The first time I learned about it, I remember feeling a strange mix of skepticism and awe. The term was unfamiliar, almost clinical: autophagy. But the more I read, the more I realized this wasn't some exotic medical trick. It was something profoundly natural, something my body had been capable of my entire life without me ever noticing. Autophagy, in simple terms, is the body's way of cleaning the house. When energy from food remains scarce for long enough, cells start looking inward. They begin identifying parts that are worn out, damaged, or simply no longer useful, proteins that have lost their shape, structures that have accumulated stress over time, fragments of cellular debris that quietly build up as we live, breathe, and age. Instead of letting that waste pile up, the cell wraps those pieces in tiny membranes and sends them to specialized compartments that function like recycling centers. There, everything is broken down into raw materials and reused to build something new. What fascinated me most was how targeted this process can be in the liver. In people with fatty liver, small droplets of fat sit inside liver cells, interfering with their normal function. They make the liver heavier, less efficient, and more inflamed. But during extended periods without food, a specialized version of this cleaning process begins to focus directly on those fat stores. Scientists call it lipophagy. Those trapped fat droplets are broken apart and converted into fuel, gradually reducing the burden inside the liver itself. That discovery changed the way I thought about the idea of detox. For years, I assumed cleansing required something external, a special drink, a supplement, a strict program. But biology tells a quieter story. The most powerful detox system isn't something you buy. It's something your body activates when you give it time. And the longer that window of time exists, the more the body shifts from simply managing energy to repairing the damage left behind. And when that repair process continues long enough, the body begins to reveal one of the most remarkable abilities it possesses, the power to rebuild itself. I remember the first time I truly understood what that meant for the liver. I had always heard that the liver was resilient, but the reality goes far beyond resilience. The liver can regenerate, not slowly, not partially, but in a way that feels almost unbelievable. Surgeons can remove a large portion of a damaged liver, and the remaining tissue can grow back toward its original size within weeks or months. That isn't just recovery, that's renewal at a cellular level. What struck me wasn't just the biology, but the quiet message behind it. The body is not fragile by default. It is designed to heal, adapt, and restore balance when the conditions allow it to do so. During consistent periods of fasting, those conditions begin to form. Inflammation inside the liver gradually settles. Cells that were once stressed start functioning more efficiently again. Blood tests that doctors use to monitor liver health, markers like ALT and AST, often move in the right direction over time. Energy regulation becomes steadier. The sharp swings between hunger and fatigue begin to smooth out. Many people notice that their relationship with food shifts in subtle but meaningful ways. Cravings become less urgent, meals feel more satisfying, eating becomes intentional rather than automatic. For me, the biggest change wasn't physical, it was mental. I stopped seeing hunger as an emergency. I started seeing it as a signal, a reminder that my body was transitioning into a state of maintenance rather than constant consumption. That shift in perspective made me more patient with my own biology. It made me more respectful of the work happening quietly inside me every day. Fasting, I realized, is not a miracle, and it's not a punishment. It's simply a pause, a window of time that allows an overworked organ to catch its breath. And maybe that's the deeper lesson hidden in all of this. Your liver has been working for you every moment of your life. Sometimes, the most supportive thing you can do in return is give it the space to recover. In the end, the lesson that stayed with me is surprisingly simple. Our bodies are not constantly breaking down. They are constantly trying to repair themselves. But repair requires time, patience, and space. In a world that encourages nonstop consumption, giving your body regular periods of rest may be one of the most powerful acts of self-care you can practice. You don't need extreme solutions, you just need consistency. Start small, allow a little more time between meals, listen to your body, and respect the quiet work happening inside you every day. Now I'm curious about you. Have you ever tried giving your body a longer break between meals, even just once? Please share your experience or thoughts in the comments, so we can all learn from each other. And if you found this discussion helpful, consider subscribing to the channel to support future videos that explore the science behind how your body truly works.